I also happen to have a Save the Cat Writes a Novel book.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's really funny looking at those and just seeing like the differences in the way that they talk about the same thing, but just slightly different. So if you like look through Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, the original one, he's breaking it up into like these different like percentages of segments kind of a thing, or not segments, I'm sorry. He's splitting them up into page numbers. So when Blake Snyder breaks up a script using the Save the Cat formula, he's like pages like 1 through 5 need to have this, pages 6 need to have this, because a movie is very generally 90 pages long or 120 pages long. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours max,
Yeah.
usually. Sometimes a little over an hour. But yeah, but like he breaks it up in that way so that you see that. But in the Save the Cat Writes a Novel book, she breaks it all up by percentages, because books can be like this bigger range. And so it's like they still need to hit certain page numbers. Like some of our guests have shared, like if you don't hit certain page numbers, then it can signal to other industry professionals that either you don't have a tight enough story, or the story is just a lot bigger than the traditional story and needs to be either condensed or broken up into 2 books, like a duology. All right. Well, welcome back to the Untitled Work in Podcast. I am your co-host, Lauren.
And I'm your co-host, Darcy.
And we are so excited to be back and chatting. I know it's only been like a week, but I don't know. This has been a crazy week for both of us outside of podcasting. So
Oh my
we're
gosh.
excited to be back.
Yeah.
Just take a breather. Just get to hang out and chit chat. And we've been obviously, as usual, gabbing for hours before this.
Always.
Going,
Every
we should
time.
probably be recording the podcast at some point.
Every time.
But we're having a blast doing it, and it's just nice to be back. And it's like a
Yes.
breath of fresh air, to be honest. So
It really is.
yeah. But today our topic is going to be storytelling in different formats. And
Yes.
we chose it because I have been having lots of conversations with other people around different storytelling formats. / I am also working on a vertical series right now, which I can't tell you about, but if you're following Misty Morning Stories on Instagram, you may have been seeing some sneak peeks. So if you don't follow that, go follow Misty Morning Stories on Instagram so that you can be in the loop and see some fun stuff. If it's still up, I don't even know at this point. But yeah, so before we kick off on that though, Darcy, catch us up on what you've been doing. How have your goals been going? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we talked a little bit about this on our last episode. We're reworking Act 1.
Yeah.
We're kind of editing the crap out of Act 1 before we get into Act 2, because we want to make sure like the beginning of the story is solid.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been working on. Basically just going through, looking at all the editing notes that Lauren's already made, finding ways to make sure that like the story fits all of the different conversations we've had regarding the character. We finally found Matilda's voice, so trying to make sure that that
Yay.
like really is like rock solid and present. Making sure that people know it's a zombie book pretty early on, so they're not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, we are
Uh,
not, what is it, James Dashner or something like that? Not James Dashner, this.
yeah.
Jill talked to you about that book series actually being about zombies after I got invested in the Maze Runner.
Oh man.
Yeah, and then zombies. I was like, dang it. Oh, I guess I'll try to keep reading this.
You're so funny about zombies.
I know. There's no shade to the writer of that series. It's fine.
I had no idea that book was about zombies. I hadn't gotten that far in it yet. So
Also,
that's so
the
funny.
movie, there's like no indication in the movie or the books, which I found the books through the movie, which, you know, is what it was. What
It happens.
it happens.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm working on that. So our deadline's been pushed back a little bit, which is, you know, it happens. We've talked about that before. It can happen sometimes.
I think it's better though because of that, because like you said, we finally found Matilda's voice, and that's why we decided to push, like we made a conscious decision to push the deadline back so that we could make sure that we're setting her up to have a really solid foundation for the next place to step into of like Act 2. So it's like we're doing it because we want to make sure that we're not going to have to rewrite so much of it when we go back for the editing portion. You know? Yeah.
It'll help us like be more solid in the story itself. So I've been doing that. School finals are coming up for the semester, so I've been working on those. And work has been busy, so I've been hanging on by the skin of my teeth.
Ugh.
But what about you? How are your deadlines? I don't know if there's any deadlines for you currently. It's kind of my for our book at least. But what are you working on? What are you doing?
Yeah, you make it sound like I'm just like sitting here with
No,
my feet up.
no, no, no. I
Just
did
like,
not
oh,
mean it like
Darcy, you
that.
know, no, no, you're fine. No, I got hired onto my first vertical series, which I think
Ooh.
you and I have talked about this, which was super funny because we were like, oh, what if we did a vertical thing for Unholy Vows at some point? Like that could be fun.
Yeah,
Which let me know if you listen to verticals, like comment that in the comment section because I'd be very curious if you would be interested in a zombie rom-com vertical or like seeing like Unholy Vows Year One as a vertical or something like that. Because that could be cool, but
yeah,
also I'm very curious because this is like my first foray into verticals. I've never done it before. And there's been a little bit of a learning curve for sure, just because like they just run differently. Like every
yeah,
format of storytelling runs differently. And so it's been really cool. And that's one of the reasons we want to talk about formats for storytelling because I've just been chatting, with so many people about, books versus movies versus, episodics versus verticals versus poetry versus, like there's just so many
yeah.
different like processes for that. So my days have been completely absorbed though with this vertical. So I have not done the couple of things that were on my to-do list for last time we all talked.
Which is fair.
I still need to go in and write some scenes out that Darcy has left for me to finesse. And then I need to go through and edit the stuff that Darcy's writing right now. But hopefully by like next weekend, I'll be in a good spot to jump back into all that.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
yeah.
work takes precedent a lot of the times, because we need the money to be able to do the book. So
Yes, it would be easier to have all the free time, but harder if I was living in a box.
that is, yeah, that's very true. That's a great way to say that. I like that.
So, it's valid. And this is also just part of doing the indie author thing. Like if you're not
Yeah,
a trad author who's made it big, like even if you're like a mid-trad, mid-level trad author, you're probably still experiencing a lot of this too of like you have to either have a day job or be really frugal or like be very like conscientious of stuff and finances and everything. And that's just part of it. So,
yeah,
we're just going through it just like everybody else. It's the real deal. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you got to start somewhere. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and a lot of the times, that starting point is pretty hectic.
Yeah, yeah. There's also just like bumps and things along the way, and that's just normal. Like, I mean, we
Yeah,
started this podcast last August,
yeah.
last
Was it
July,
August?
August, something like that. July
Something
or
like that.
August.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think it was August, but so like we haven't even been doing this for a full year, but like we're coming up on it. And
yeah,
we started the podcast because we wanted a video audio format to keep us like on point and accountable
yeah,
to the goals we were setting for the book, which we wanted to complete in order to be able to tell this story and not be throttled and constrained by movie budgets. But the goal is
yeah.
to eventually tell it as a movie, which is a different setup than the book. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
because and I mean this, like you were saying, like this story that we're telling, it started out as a movie, and then now it's a book, and we still want it to be a movie. So we're learning how to tell this story in different formats and everything
yeah.
like that to make sure it
Mhm.
hits where it needs to. So
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's funny because there's I know I talk about Save the Cat way too much, but I gave Darcy or I let Darcy Save the Cat's write screenplay book in the beginning, and then I also happen to have a Save the Cat writes a novel book.
yeah,
And so it's like it's really funny looking at those and just seeing like the differences in the way that they talk about the same thing but just slightly different. So if you like look through Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, the original one, he's breaking it up into like these different like percentages of segments kind of a thing or not segments, I'm sorry, he's splitting them up into page numbers.
yeah,
So when Blake Snyder breaks up a script using the Save the Cat formula, he's like pages like 1 through 5 need to have this, pages 6 need to have this, because a movie is very generally 90 pages long or 120 pages long. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours max
yeah,
usually. Sometimes a little over an hour. But yeah, but like he breaks it up in that way so that you see that. But in the Save the Cat Writes a Novel book, she breaks it all up by percentages because books can be
ah,
like this bigger range. And so it's like they still need to hit certain page numbers. Like some of our guests have shared, like if you don't hit certain page numbers, then it can signal to other industry professionals that either you don't have a tight enough story or the story is just a lot bigger than the traditional story. It needs to be either condensed or broken up into two books, like a duology, or just, it just signals different things. Of this might take more oomph to get it going. Right.
Yeah.
And so, as an indie author, we want the least amount of friction possible. So, looking at, hey, like this is how Save the Cat Writes a Novel breaks up the percentages, but also these different ranges. And are we hitting these beats within these percentages to make sure that, like, if an agent or if a bookstore or if an editor looks at it, they're going to immediately know, okay, cool. Like they know what they know what they're doing a
Yeah.
little bit,
They've
a
hit
little
what
bit.
they're supposed to. Yeah.
And we're hitting what we're supposed to within the certain element because it's like what the first 10 pages need to hook. Like agents will look at like the first 10 pages, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's usually when you're querying. That's
yeah,
what
when
you're
you're
giving them.
querying, yeah, and if you can't capture them in that moment, in that first 10 pages, then it's like, then they know that you don't necessarily have like that hook that's needed. So there's the element
Yep.
too of just like, where are these beats? Like, are we talking about, are we setting up the world? Are we hooking him in of like, why this story right now at this, like, why are we starting the story right now at this time? So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
cool.
the thing is too is like a word count is like apparently like a really like big thing
Mhm.
when it comes to like writing novels
Yeah,
for traditional publishing from what I've been learning like from past guests and then from social media and stuff is that like
yeah.
you really want to hit like within the specific word count. I think it's like 120 or something like that for like a base standalone novel. Like it can be a little bit
Mhm.
more than that, but if it's too many words or too little words, they're like, no, we can't take it.
Yeah,
It's not going to sell the
yeah.
way it needs to.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, there's a lot to it, especially when you just look at the different formats of it. And I don't know, maybe I don't know if people are interested in seeing their book be turned into a movie, or they're like, what if my book was like with social media? You could do your own vertical series on social media where you just like,
yeah.
you could find, talented filmmakers or storytellers, or, if you're an influencer or a bookstagrammer or something like that, to recreate different scenes from books that you really like and like weave them together into that story element. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, there's just a lot of fun things you can do with it.
It's also like a really great way to set up an IP for your story. Like you have the book already, but like you want it to become a movie. Like a great way to set up an additional IP to show that people will
Mm.
be interested in like a
Yeah.
visual version of your story
Yeah.
is to do the verticals like in your own verticals because a,
Yeah.
a lot of the verticals from what I've been learning like doing research and everything into them is it's a lot of social media influencers that like they've written it and
Mm.
they're the ones who are creating it and they're the ones who have brought it to life.
Yeah.
Um that's where it kind of started when it first came over because I think originally it
Mm.
started as like I don't think it started like verticals I don't think started in like the American space originally. Because if you go into some of like the apps and stuff a lot of them are I think like K-drama type vibes. Um
Mm.
and recently we're starting to pull in like the American influences now and the American
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah.
And it's just influencers who had an idea and they created it and then they reached out to these places and created this vertical series so you can do it for your book too.
Yeah. I would even be curious if like picking like your top like couple of scenes. Like if you have your book going around to like beta readers or ARC readers, or if it's already out and just seeing the feedback of like what were the moments that people love the most, right? And then just recreating like a couple of those to whatever capacity, is you're able to, and using that as just a way to like show almost like the tropes, almost like those carousels that people do of like
Yeah,
tropes.
yeah.
I mean, like these are the tropes, like kind of a thing of just like it's a video representation of like the carousel almost of like
Yeah.
here's a little taste of the flavor of this story.
No, fully. And kind of like you can also kind of look at it like from the standpoint of like being a fan of your own work. Because growing up, like as you know, I'm a younger millennial, but I'm still a millennial. And growing up within the way we were, YouTube was like the thing. We didn't really have like the Instagram and everything like the Instagram, like I'm 50. We didn't really have we didn't really have Instagram and stuff like that. I mean, we did, but it was more photos. Like there wasn't like a video aspect of Instagram. Um, but people who were fans of books would create their
Mhm.
scenes. They would recreate the book
Yeah.
scenes and put them on
Yeah.
YouTube and like
Yeah.
make it its own thing. So think about it as like being a fan of your own work. If
Yeah.
you are a fan of your work, you can create these things that will then draw in more attention to the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, pivoting away from, like, the, like, vertical social media component
Yeah.
a little bit, like, you've written scripts and you've written, like, more, like, book style stories.
Yes.
What in your perspective is, like, the big difference? Because I've talked a little bit about, like, the Save the Cat difference of, like, how they've structured it, but for you, like, how do you see what do you see are some of the main differences? Because there's lots of differences, but especially as, like, a writer, like, what are those things that you're seeing?
Um the I think the bigger things for the differences is going to be the way your dialogue has to hit, um as well as the visual elements. So
Mhm.
the like with the story, right? You're showing people. They have
Wait,
to
what
be able
story?
to
Wait,
like a
with what
sorry,
story?
with like a book, with like a
Oh,
book
okay, okay.
story. Sorry.
Yeah.
You have
Like, they're all
to
stories.
I'm tired.
Ugh, same, bro,
uh,
same. Ugh. Oh, man.
but so with a book, right? If you're writing a novel, you are giving people something to imagine. So
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
might have less dialogue. Like there may be less
Mhm.
dialogue happening within the story because the
Yeah.
characters kind of going
Yeah.
into their own head and they're missing
Mhm.
things and all that
Sure.
stuff. So the dialogue still hits in the way it needs to, but there's more depth behind the scenes internally that's going on. Um when you have a script
Yeah.
with a movie, you're mostly doing dialogue and visuals. So you have to make sure that dialogue hits those key points, and then your actors are the ones who give you that visual cognizance of what's going
Yeah.
on inside of their head.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I hear so many people in the filmmaking space talk about for movies or episodic TV shows kind of thing, your if someone were to mute your movie, could they still understand what was happening? And it's
Yeah.
like having that concept as like a script writer of being like, okay, I need to make sure that I am painting a picture with the visuals and the dialogue, like you said, still has to hit because we've all watched movies with bad dialogue. And we were like, okay, nobody talks like this. Or also like, why did we say this? But, like, you should like, if someone were to just mute it or walk by and not know where like, what was going on, could they still understand the story that was in front of them? But in, like, a novel, like, you have it's totally different, like you said, like, you're internal, and so many people talk about that in, like, book to movie remakes, right? Like,
Yeah.
Hunger Games or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, but in the book, she was, like, processing this, and it was like this and that," and, like, I personally think Hunger Games is actually one of the best book to movie
I
adaptations
yeah, I
personally
agree.
from what I've seen, because they just played it so cleverly with, like because so much like, okay, I'm gonna go on, like, Hunger Games tangent real quick. Just real quick, when wrap pull me back in if I get too far off. But, like, in the Hunger Games, in the books, she is in the arena in number 1. Spoilers, I guess. Spoilers, she's in the arena.
uh,
She is in the arena, and she has no idea what's happening outside of the arena for, like, I would say probably, like, 80% of the book. Like, she has the
yeah.
first act where she's not, so maybe for 75% of the book, she's, like, in the arena, and then there's a little bit at the very end, and there's, like, the first act kind of thing. But there's so much going on and so much she's thinking about and processing and remembering and even, like, the concept of a mockingjay or, like, tracker jackers and, like, all these things that you're just like, how are you gonna explain that in a movie? She's not gonna be like, "Oh, no, look, it's a mockingjay, the thing that was a mockingbird crossed with a jaybird by the Capitol to be able to" like, it is like, obviously, that is just the
Yeah.
worst way to do that possible, but you see book to movie adaptations doing it, right? But
Right.
instead, they just so cleverly that were, like, brought in the reality TV show, game show
Yes.
competition of that world and, like, brought in those little snippets. Just they weren't that big or that long with the announcers or the hosts, and they were like, "Oh, look, it's the Tracker Jackers. Do you remember back when they, like, created that?" "Oh, I do, and they
Yeah.
did this thing and it won the war," and you're like, now you have all the information as, like, an audience, but you
Yeah.
didn't need Katniss to be like, "Tracker Jackers, these things that did this thing,
Yeah.
that did that, they were created for this purpose."
And
Like
they made us watchers too. Like they made us like
Yes.
another way to like really incorporate the feelings that Katniss was
Yeah.
getting within it is that they made us
Right.
the districts watching the
Yeah.
Hunger Games.
Yeah, the audience for it. You were the audience for
Yeah.
the movie, and then you were the audience for the Hunger Games in the
Yep.
Hunger Games, right? Like, it's just
Yeah.
it was really well done. Anyways, Tangent over.
Yeah. I was literally we watched those like just a few months ago, me and my roommates, and I literally
Yeah,
had that exact same conversation. I was like,
yeah,
this was done really well.
yeah. I'm also just so
So
excited for the Haymitch one that's coming out. I read the Ballad
yeah.
of Song not Ballad, I did read that one too, but Sunrise on the Reaping, which
Oh,
is
I
the one
haven't read
coming
that
out.
one yet. So
Oh, it's so good. You should read it. It completely
okay.
upends everything. Like, it completely upends the story I thought they were going to tell about Haymitch
Mm.
in like the absolute best ways possible. And there's some stuff in there that she throws in that's very like modern references in a non like you're going to read back and think this is dated kind of a way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's completely different than I thought. And he is a very different main character to follow
Oh.
than Katniss or Snow. Katniss and Snow are
Okay.
very in charge of their own destiny type people. Like Katniss is
Yeah.
a survivor, Snow is a survivor. Haymitch is very different.
Oh,
Like
okay.
it's really good. Anyways, all right. Now that we've
Okay.
promoted Suzanne Collins' book for her movie, which I'm honestly happy to do. I love them. They're great.
Yeah, I think they're
But
wonderful.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's a huge formatting thing to like think of is
Hmm.
like how are you going to tell the audience what they
Hmm.
need to know that in the book the character's thoughts were telling you.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think there's an element too of like obviously this topic is probably more helpful in this regard book to movie for authors who are already published who are maybe thinking about going that route. But I think for the indie authors who are like where we're at, or even the trad published authors who are where we're at, where we're like in the process of writing our manuscript, we're getting our debut novel out there, looking at it from a marketing standpoint of marketing it as the story it is and not
Mm,
necessarily as a like generic marketing campaign, right? Like it's still good to
right.
have those carousels that are like, here are the tropes that you can, and get invested in this story, or here's the things that you'll really enjoy about it, or like here's some, character art and things like that help tell the story. But I think there's an element too of looking at like the constraints of social media and the way that you can tell a story through that way and being like, how can I, like we said earlier, take moments from my story that people will resonate with and within the constraints of social media of the vertical space tell those stories to help people be invested in this story or
Right.
like catch that flavor. And so like I don't know. I think that it's one more thing for indie authors to do. I get that. It's hard.
Yeah. So many things.
But I think it's just so valuable because like even marketing podcasts I listen to very consistently in this year specifically and a little bit of last year, they were talking about so many businesses are moving to narrative marketing campaigns,
Yeah.
like narrative-based episodic marketing campaigns because that's what people want. People want to connect. And if you like Darcy was saying, if you're listening to like or watching like YouTube, whatever, like back in the day, like what is it? There was like a ghost hunter girl. There was like it was like Sunshine, like Daisy Sunshine. I don't know. There was like a ghost hunter girl on YouTube, and it was like honestly the most like whatever video quality out there. Like it
Yeah.
was fine, but like people loved it because it was this story
Yeah.
and you were invested. It was almost like a reality show of like ghost hunters kind of a vibe with this
Right.
girl.
Like a lot of the TikTok videos that people make that you get of like them telling like there's this one creator on TikTok and I can't remember his name for the life of me. So if you guys know it, let me know. But he's a writer, but
Yeah.
he tells these horror stories about like places being haunted
Mm.
that he works. So
Oh
you
wow.
think it's like it feels like it's a real dude being like
Yeah.
hunted by like these
Yeah.
creatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um each video is like a different day or a different
Yeah.
interaction that
Yeah.
happens, but he wrote it in a way that you're like, "Oh my gosh, like is this real or not?" Like and you only know that it's not real if you do research into who he is as a person. Like he has the entire thing set up like just a normal person being
Yeah.
haunted.
That's like, do you remember the story about when War of the Worlds was first done as a audiobook or audio, oh shoot, what was it? It was like radio theater. That's what it was. I don't know. None of us
Okay.
listen to radio theater nowadays. But back in the day, before audiobooks could be a thing, they had radio theater, which was basically a live audiobook that you could listen to. But
Yeah.
they did it on the radio. And in the very beginning, before they launched it, they said, this is an audiobook presentation of War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds, if you're not familiar, which you should be familiar with because it's a great story, is
Great
about
story.
aliens that come down and invade the Earth or whatever. But when they did the audio, the radio theater version of it, people that would just jumped in and tuned in, thought it was a real news broadcast of like
Yeah.
literally aliens destroying New York City, and like mass panic actually like started to happen because of it. Like there was
Yeah.
actually like these moments where people started like panic buying things. There was like all like there's actually like a societal impact because of this radio theater thing. And then they had to be like, no, guys, wait. It's just because in the story, they're doing like a journalist is like covering this stuff and interviewing survivors, like, what happened? And if you didn't know, you came into it being like, oh my gosh, like what
Yeah, yeah.
happened? Unless you were in New York and looked out your window and were like, I don't think they've
Everything's
hit
fine.
34th Street yet. I think we're good.
Yeah. Um, really fun. Just okay. This is a side tangent. So
Yeah.
the first time I ever watched The War of the Worlds, like when they adapted it to a movie, I can't
Yeah.
speak today. Adapted it to a movie.
Yeah.
Um, I was younger and we had watched it, and literally as the credits started rolling, lightning struck and the power went out. I was
No.
so freaked out. I was so scared.
I bet that'd be so scary.
Yeah. It's like I was like,
Like, oh, it was in the movie and it just happened.
we had like a bay window and I was like in it, like, are there aliens?
Are they there? Let me go to the window where they can snatch me.
Right.
Hey, it's better to know than not know.
Get it over with, you know? But yeah,
But
that
like
was my
that's what
side
I'm
tangent.
no, like that's what I'm saying though when it comes to like social media of looking at like that. I think that is such a cool concept too of like maybe you've got a work in progress or a whip that you've got that's going on, but it's just something you're kind of plugging away at a little bit here and there. And maybe pivoting a little bit of your time to like doing a like short story, like short
Mm.
serialized content element of like what's a version of this story or another story that you like to just keep the juices flowing kind of a thing that
Yeah.
you could literally just like put like your phone right there and record you telling the story in a setting and you're like, maybe it's an adventure, like a, some sort of like adventure thing and you live near a forest or you live near a park or you live near a space where you could go out and be like, hey, I'm in the jungle and we're like looking for the spotted owl and like I don't know, like just something
Yeah.
like that. Or you're in an urban setting and like you've got like all these cool like alleyways and streets and like graffiti backgrounds and like you're telling the story of like some up and comer for something, like some cool up and comer story or whatever. I don't know, like just
Yeah.
there's just like you can do it. Like our phones, our technology we have allows you to tell stories. It's just more of like what
Yeah.
format are we telling it in? And if you
Right.
write it out, like it's I mean, yeah, a lot of us don't want to be on camera, right? Like a lot of us are more
Yeah.
introverted. We don't like necessarily want to be putting ourselves out there. But if you make it fun for yourself, I feel like that changes it. Like you're telling a story, you're having
Yes.
fun. Or if you have a friend who wants to act or like do that stuff, be like, if I write something for you, would you just do it? And then
Right.
you get the writer credit for it and they can post it out there and tag
Yeah.
you in it. I don't know.
Yeah, no. And like even too, like if you don't want to be on camera, like another like way of like doing it, if you have like Lauren was saying, you have like these outside areas or like these cool alleyways, and there's this part in your book, like a scene in your book, instead of just putting the text on the screen, reading it. If you just read
Mm-hmm.
that scene while that's
Mm-hmm.
playing out in front of you, also a really good way to like tell a story. Because when you're telling a story through social media, instead of just like, and you don't want it to just be text on a screen, the visuals, that's what's going to grab you, is those visuals, because that's what you have to do when you write a movie, what you have to do when you write a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
um Look at like the way like props and stuff are really important too. Like if you don't want to be on screen and you want to like put this scene like in a picture of like an idea. You have a scene where this couple, they are interacting in the kitchen or something like that, but you don't want to actually have any couple on screen. You can
Mm-hmm.
literally just do like a pan, like a single shot pan view of like going through this kitchen that's like a
Mm-hmm.
little bit messy. It has some flour on the counter. They were doing the dishes, so there's dishes in the sink, and you're
Yeah.
like reading the scene over. You're still
Mm-hmm.
showing and telling
Yeah.
that story with just the visual.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just reading it. It's a voiceover at that point, and you don't have
Yeah.
to be on screen. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, I feel like there's so many fun ways to do this. It's just more of like how do we want to do it? Slash, obviously, everyone has very full lives,
right, right.
but
It's hard
I don't know.
sometimes, but And I think one of the bigger things too with like the difference between film and like novels is the playroom that you have when you are telling like obviously in a novel you have the playroom of like showing more things to people, like the internal monologue and everything like that, like the
Mm-hmm.
very obvious like novel playroom. But with a movie playroom, you have so much to play with because you're not in first person. Even if you're technically telling the story, because like obviously there's POVs in TV shows
Hmm.
and movies. Like you're
Yeah.
following this one character, it's their POV, but
Yeah.
it's third person focused. Even when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that in a movie, you have things to play with. Like she might not notice that he like Mr. Darcy touches her hand and then he like flexes his hand. She doesn't notice that. But as an audience, we notice it because you have this playroom to be like, okay, I can show that he's sweating a little bit. I can show that his like
Mm-hmm.
jaw keeps ticking
Yeah.
because he's actually angry. I can show that like
Mm-hmm.
her being in his space, he tightens up and his muscles get tense because he's
Mm-hmm.
nervous around her. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's so much more playroom when you have a movie, even when it's a focused point of view.
Yeah. I would even just add to that of like they're different spaces to play in, right? Like in the book, like we said, like your space to play in is in the character's head, so you feel more you can feel more connected
Yeah.
intimately to that character because you're like, I know their thoughts, like I know who they are deep down, versus like in a movie you have different spaces to play in for like the visual component of like wardrobe can communicate something, like in the Matrix there's the girl in the red dress, very very noticeable because everyone else is wearing black, right? Like so there's these
Right.
elements where you can use color and texture and visuals, or like I was telling Darcy a while ago, I don't even remember if I said this on the podcast, but when I've been working on Unholy Vows Year One and writing it, I've been struggling a little bit because I just want to write like, and then this music comes in, and then this montage scenes happens, and then all this happens, and it's so great, and it's funny, and it's like, like just like these things that I can see playing out from like like a video standpoint, but I'm trying to
Yeah.
translate it into the book standpoint, and I'm like, it's like it's not bad. Neither of them are better than the other. They're just like different spaces to play in, right? Or
Yeah.
different areas where you can expand upon, kind of a thing.
Yeah, because like you don't have like the luxury of like having the music in the background telling you something. Because
I know. What?
like there's scenes where like you have this thing where a music over it would give you like the perfect opportunity to see inside of this person's head because that music's what's
Hmm.
going on.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have that in a book. You have to write the thoughts out.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So
Yeah.
none of them are bad, just different constraints around, each format, each storytelling style.
Yeah.
Words. And
Or
even
just
like we
very
didn't touch
different.
on it. Yeah, and we didn't touch on it even, but like poetry, even like that has like a
Yeah.
rhythm and a cadence for each of the lines. Like lines have different ways in which they are written out. If you're writing music, like that also has a different way in being written out.
And with poetry too, like there are poetry books that tells a story
Mhm.
throughout
Yeah,
the entire book. Like it's all
yeah,
interconnected of like the before and after a lot of the times.
yeah,
And that's its own beautiful way of like you're not getting every single thing, but you're
yeah.
getting the deepest things.
Oh my gosh, you said that and it reminded me of this book I haven't read in forever. Actually, I have it right here. One sec.
Ah.
This is the benefit of doing our podcast in front of my library.
But yeah.
Okay, so there's this book. It's called A Song of Sparrows.
Oh.
Song of the Sparrow. Man, words. It's called Song of the Sparrow. I haven't read this since like, I don't know, high school, but it was fantastic back then. And what's interesting is the entire book is written as poetry almost. So like
Ah.
it's all written like that. Like it's
Oh.
the entire book is that, and it's like broken up like chapters. And I don't like this is I think this is the only book of its kind that I have where it's like written,
Yeah.
it's like poetry written as a story. So like even with that, like,
Yeah.
and I like it's so immersive. I don't remember ever being like in high school when I was reading, I remember being like, I don't know, it didn't hit quite right. Um, but it's like it's that one passes the Bechdel test though.
Yeah. Yay.
Well, because it's about the only girl in the camp of King Arthur until Gwendolyn comes along. And the
Oh.
female dynamics between the only two women in the entire camp who have very different relationships with men and very different relationships to the concept of women because they haven't been around women a whole lot.
Oh,
It's
I'm
a
gonna have to
really
read
good
that.
story.
That sounds really good.
It's really,
Yeah.
really good.
Um,
But yeah.
Another like thing, oh gosh, what is the book called? There's this book, where it's really weird. Like it tells a story, like it's a full story, but the
Yeah.
pages are weird. Like there's pages where it's written in a
Mm.
spiral and you have to like
Oh,
turn the book
interesting.
to read it, and or like yeah, like, and it's really weird, but it puts you in the mindset of this character who's struggling with like something in their mental health.
Mm.
So it's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so even within, like, story writing, there's so many different ways to do it to fit the tone of what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could do the spirals, you could do poetry, like a narrative poetry. I don't know how else you would call that,
You
but,
could do
like,
like Lemony Snicket where he blacks out
ugh,
an entire page. 'Cause
I love Lemony Snicket, so good.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's so
um,
many things to do.
yeah. So it's yeah, I think it's just one of those things where it's just finding the constraints within the storytelling structure or format you're working with, and then, like,
Yeah.
embracing those constraints and being like, "No other format will let me tell this story in this way." You know?
Yeah.
Like
And
yeah.
even pushing on those constraints, like being like, okay, so this is, I'm writing a book. This is what I have to do as a book writer, but then pushing it, making those weird spirals on the screen, like on the book page, like making the you can push the constraints, but still tell the story within them, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was talking to someone this week about it, and this guy was asking me, "Well, what's your favorite format to tell stories in?" And I was like, I honestly look at it kind of like the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're all telling the same story, but they're telling it from different lenses. Like John's is very
Mm,
much like a almost like a novel where it's like that like intimate personal connection element. Luke is telling it from like a doctor's standpoint, so he's very focused on like the physical miracles that are happening and being like, this is how this happened and this happened and this happened. Matthew is
mm,
telling it from like a Jewish perspective, so he's focused on like, here's the genealogies, here are these different customs, here are these different things that like apply to Jewish culture. And then Mark is telling it for like a Roman audience. And so it's fast paced, it's moving. It's like, here's all the action points. Let's go, let's
oh,
go. We don't have time to stop. Let's go. We gotta go, 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 go. At the end. And you're like, whoa, okay.
yeah.
Watch an action movie. But it's like they're all like, if you when you're changing your story to different formats, you're telling the same story just with a different focal point, right? Or like a
Yeah.
different way of like that perspective element of being like, in the book, we're like deep in your thoughts. In the movie, we're like deep in the world and all of these different elements of like music and sound and lights and color that you can't have in a book, obviously.
Yeah. And like in a TV show, you have to be more focused on visual things, especially if you have like a lot of characters, because you're
Mhm.
not going to get those single moments where you're getting to see all of it constantly.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you're telling that story in that split second that they have
Yeah.
screen time.
Well, and not only that, but we haven't even touched on this, which is my bad. We're just talking about movies and books at this point. But like episodic, the way you write those, you have to hook people within like a minute, and you have like 20 to 45 minutes usually to tell this story, and you have to end it on a way that will make someone want to come back to then pay it off on the beginning of the next episode to then do that same element while still telling
Yeah.
a really solid story within that time frame constraint.
Yeah, without it jumping around too much, but still jumping around enough that like you're understanding that this is like, it feels like, take like TV shows for example, like 911. You have you're telling these character stories, but you're also telling a story about like their jobs. So it has to
Mhm.
end the world around like first responders. So
Yeah.
they have to focus on the characters. They have these scenes with the characters, but
Yeah.
then they still have to like jump around and give you like an emergency in
Mhm.
that episode
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
the show is about. But
Right.
you also know that people are invested in the characters, so you have to make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
you're giving them something.
Right. Ugh, I love ensemble stories. Like they're
Yes.
tricky to write. They are complex to write, but like when they're well done, they're just so good.
Yes, yeah.
Ugh,
And then
yeah.
you have like Playroom too with like a bucket episode, like where it takes place in
Mhm.
one bucket. It's it. You're in one area the whole time, you don't go anywhere else,
Yep.
but you're still
Yep.
telling like this crazy story.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they call those bottle episodes.
You know what? They do. I called it a bucket, but
I'm just saying, I'm just clarifying so that when our listeners end up getting their books picked up to be turned into a TV show, they're like, actually, I want a bottle episode. We're going to do it in one location. And their film people are going to be like, wow, you are so knowledgeable about this. We are going to just increase your budget and make you tell the story even better.
yeah, please don't call it a bucket episode. I'm just an idiot.
No, not at all. We're
I knew
both
it started with a
tired,
B.
guys. No, you're yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we're
Uh,
both very tired, guys, which
so
I think we're
tired.
I think we're doing pretty good for how little sleep we've both gotten. But I
Yeah.
think we've kind of fleshed this out pretty well as far as like the
Yeah.
different formatting constraints. But yeah, I'd
Yeah.
be really curious if you end up doing something that's like social media centric where you're like telling your story in like a reel or some sort of like video visual component, like definitely tag us in it so we can come see it.
We
We'd
would
love
love
to see
that.
what stories people are working on and how you represent it visually, whether it's a voiceover over a kitchen with flour and dirty dishes and all this stuff, or you're actually like getting full actors, props, wardrobe, all this stuff. Like
Yeah,
whatever.
however you're telling the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be really
There's
fun to
so many
see for sure.
ways.
And
I'd
also
love
we
to
need to
see
figure out how to do that ourselves. So it's not just homework for it's homework for everybody.
it. We just give you homework. I'll always come to class prepared, guys. You gotta have a notebook.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
All
Wild. All right. Well,
right,
I
well,
think that's about it for
yeah,
us.
I think
Darcy,
so.
where can the listeners find you if they want to continue to follow along?
Yeah, so you can find me and follow my journeys at Darcy_Michaela, Micaela. It's spelt a little bit differently. You can find me on Instagram, Threads. I do have a Facebook page as well. And then you can find the podcast at untitledworkinpodcast. That's on Instagram. It is on Threads, but I don't use that Threads account as often. And then on TikTok as well.
Mhm.
And then you can find me also at my website, darcymichaela.com. I sent
Amazing.
out my first newsletter last
No
week.
way.
Yeah, I don't know if it was good, but I
Nice
did it.
job. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I haven't sent
So
one out yet.
it's it's hard. Oh, Canva has a new email formatting thing. So you can
Oh,
actually
cool.
format the email and then transfer it over
Copy
and send it
paste it over.
out
Oh,
so that
cool.
it's like you don't have to like yeah, it's way easier. It's
Nice.
very nice.
Love it. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, but Lauren, where can they find you?
Yeah, if you guys want to follow along on my story slash the podcast, mistymorningstories.com is the website. And then you can follow me at Misty Morning Stories on Instagram, Substack, YouTube, Threads technically, but really most of it's on Instagram, Substack, and YouTube and Facebook as well, if that's your jam. And that's about
Yeah.
it.
Woo. All right.
We did it.
Hey, we did that way cleaner than we usually do, so
We really did. Yeah. Yeah.
we're getting better.
Slowly but
uh,
surely.
and on that note, just remember, everybody is a work in progress. It's a process. We'll see you
That's
next
right.
week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.